Hello, it's Whitney Wiley, and thank you for joining me for Love Your Work. And this is the interview series where I talk with people who love the work they do and they share with you their journey to getting there so that you can take a little nugget out of what maybe you can do or steps you can take, things that you can learn from the lessons that they've learned on their path to love that they work. And today I have with me Sejal Thakkar, who is going to share with us her story and journey to work she loves. Sejal, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here. This
I
is so exciting.
thank
Thanks.
you for being here. I'm excited to have you. And I want to tell you that when I see your job title on your LinkedIn profile, it makes me smile. And I told my sister this morning I was going to be interviewing you, and she said the world needs more of that. So why don't
Awesome.
you tell our
Yay.
audience what, first of all, let's start with your job title, what your job title is, and then tell us what that actually means.
All right, cool. Well, these are self-proclaimed job titles, right? But I've got two that I really, really love. The first one is I call myself the Chief Civility Officer.
Love that.
And it's really, really, it really does describe what I do, and I'll tell you about that. And then the second title is also, I think, just really fit for what I do, is I call myself the Legal Training Ninja. So those are my two titles. And, you know, a couple years ago, I started up my own company, Train Extra, and really my goal was to help companies creating more civility within their
Yeah.
workplaces, creating respectful workplaces. And so I am the Chief Civility Officer because the way that I look at it is that, each one of us, regardless of the color of our skin, our religion, our nationality, or our any part of us, anything that makes us unique, when we go to work, what we want to be treated with dignity and respect.
Absolutely.
So that's why I call myself the Chief Civility Officer. And then Legal Training Ninja really is, I'm an employment lawyer by background. So for a number of years, I litigated cases in court as an attorney representing management in a lot of these cases. And I've learned a lot of lessons along the way. And one of the areas that I really felt that I could make a positive impact is by training. And so I train with private sector, public sector, nonprofits, employers, leaders, everybody, on just really how to be respectful in the workplace. And I do a lot of other topics too, but that's really the main area that I like to focus in on.
I love that. And you're absolutely right. It's an area that we need a lot of in corporations and in the workplace in general, and then in the world. And so it's kind of like if we all brought that civility with us to the workplace, what a wonderful place it would be, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I really think that that's really where we need to be, where organizations need to focus their efforts. Because, look, uh, I was saying the same thing before COVID. I was saying the same thing before our current
Yeah.
racial civil movement. My story has always been the same, is that when you look at these organizations, a lot of them are spending money on their training. They're spending money on diversity and inclusion. They're trying, and they have well intentions to really do right by their employees. But when I really started looking at why these lawsuits were being filed, and when I was coming in talking to management, it became really clear that a lot of people just don't know how to behave at work, right? We can't expect everybody to know what's okay, what's not okay. Or another important part is, what do I do if something's happening to me that's making me feel uncomfortable? I mean, for a long time, it was this idea of, no, we don't want anybody to speak up. Like, don't tell them their
Right.
rights. We don't want them to speak up. And I'm out there saying, no, this can't work. There is absolutely no way that you can have a culture of trust unless you empower your employees to deal with these situations, to help them navigate, right?
Amen,
And that,
sister. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
That's true. It in one respect, it just seems like it's common sense, right? If you are, and it goes back to one of the things we're taught as a child. It's said in different ways, but basically it's the golden rule: treat other people the way you want to be treated. And I don't know why that seems to be such a hard nut to crack in organizations. I get that there are stressors in the workplace that sometimes keep people on edge, and maybe they're not behaving the way they normally would, but for the most part, let's just be nice to each other, right? It's like it's not that difficult. It really isn't that difficult. So
I know. And with the issue that makes it difficult or challenging, I would say, is because they've allowed it to go on for so
yeah,
long. And so now for us to get to that point, we have to just do some work. And that's really what it is. It's not impossible. And that's why when I'm talking to leaders and they're feeling overwhelmed, I'm like, it seems like a lot of work, and it is going to be work, but it can happen. It's just, we need
right.
to go back and break those bad habits, because a culture of an organization is really what they tolerate, what they've allowed to
Exactly.
go on. So if you tell people, and what better time than right now to make that kind of change in your organization, to say, you know what, whatever you believe in, it's okay. Your perspectives are yours. But when you come to work, and, in my opinion, this should be our way all the time, but at least I focus in on the work as much as I can, because that's an environment that's contained. I can do something about it. So
Right.
every organization can say, you know what, when you come to work, these are the rules. And if you don't follow them, then this is going to happen, right? So that's one thing. But I think a lot of organizations say they want that, but then they don't put the resources or the training or the money behind it. And then it's just talk. It's lip service, right?
Right. That is the big challenge in this, is that it's easy to say what you want your culture to be, how you want your employees to behave, but you
Mm-hmm.
have to stand behind it. You have to walk your talk. You have to be a leader that leads by example, not just
Yep.
saying this is what we want and then not putting the resources behind that. So tell
That's right.
us a little bit about why you love the work that you're doing.
I'm so, like, when I was preparing for our call today, that was such a great question, because I love what I do. I truly do. And I just haven't, like, sat down and actually thought about why is it. And so this really helped me kind of put it together. So I first of all, I consider my full-time job to be a mom, right? That's my full-time job, is being a mother first. I have he just turned 8, and I really, that's where I put all most of my priority, is making sure that I can be present for him. But that's one of the things I love about what I do, is because I could have the flexibility to schedule my day around him and
Right.
incorporate him into my day. And that's just so important to me, because he brings me present. He makes me here 100% of the time. He makes me want to be a better role model. He holds me to these standards of integrity that I know he's watching me. And so I just love that. I have to bring that up, because that's really a huge part of why I love what I do. And so the way I think about what I do for the world, or to my communities that I'm working in, is I say I educate. I really call myself an educator. I get to educate people, not just on the civil workplace issues, but I get to pick some other areas where I can make a positive impact. For example, when COVID started, I mean, I feel like I literally predicted the civil rights movement. I did a podcast with a friend of mine, Summer Watson, and this was before the Black Lives Matter movement all started going and picked up like full steam, right? It was before that. And when COVID hit, we started seeing a lot of racism take place against Asian Americans. And on that podcast, I was really talking to her about, like, how COVID and the fear of everything that was going on, that it was the perfect recipe for a huge civil rights movement. Like, literally, I mean, it just kept saying, like, this is going to bring out the evil in people, or it's going to bring out the good in people.
Right.
So I get
Right.
to talk about these areas that I'm passionate about, and educate, and try to move the needle. I like to push the needle, and get us to start thinking more progressively and radically to make these changes. So education's a huge part of what I love that I can do. And also I love that I get to share resources. I'm huge on sharing resources with people. I'm not saying I know all the answers to everything, but I'm building a great network of subject matter experts and people with just lived experiences that can talk about these issues.
I love that.
And I love helping people in that way, because that's what we have right now. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We really don't. We have our human connections that we've made with people in our lives. We have our networks, and we have our own abilities to make a difference. And I'm just
Right.
calling on everybody to come together for all of that.
I
So
love that. I love that. So, Sejal, let's go back a little bit in time. Um, and you mentioned that you had done employment law work, but let's go back even further than that. What was the very first job that you had?
oh my God. Yeah. Well, that would be my dad's convenience store that was attached to our house. So we lived
Oh,
behind
wow.
the store. Yeah, literally behind the store. So I was probably running the cash register when I was about 5 years old. So I was pounding on the cash register back then. Yeah, we grew up in, my parents, they moved here from India in 74, and that's when I was born. I was conceived in India, born in Chicago. So
Okay, cool.
talk about and they didn't speak a lot of English, so just like a lot of immigrants, they wanted to open up their own businesses. And so my parents had their own businesses like pretty much my whole life. So I grew up in stores, talking to people and helping out at the parents' family business. So
Oh, that's cool. And
yeah.
so you said started around 5. Did you work all through school and through high school at the stores, or have you ever worked for anyone other than your parents?
Yeah, so I up until until I got to high school, it was literally just helping out with the store and doing our chores at home. And education was always the top priority. Like with every other Indian family who's got immigrants, like it's all about the school. Forget there's no sports, there's no music, there's really none of that other stuff seems to matter to our parents. It's always about stay focused on education, and then that was it. But when I got to high school, I went and worked for somebody else. And that first job was working for the Chicago Tribune as a
Oh, wow.
telemarketer, as a telemarketer selling the newspaper to people on the phone.
How did you like that job?
I liked it. I actually really liked it. I liked the idea of talking to people. Although I changed my first name right away because Sejal was just too hard for people to pronounce. So we would end up spending 10 minutes on my name and where I was from and all of that stuff. And then so I just changed it to Cindy or Sandy or something like that when I was working
That,
there. But
that's unfortunate, right? It's not that difficult to say. So,
this was like years ago, and you're in high school and you're like, I think I was getting paid like $4.25 an hour, right? Plus commission. So it's like, wait, I want to get the commission. I want to get the sales.
it's like, I don't have time for this name thing. I need to get to the sales, right?
Exactly.
That's
So,
interesting. When did you decide that you wanted to go to law school?
you know what? Honestly, that was something I feel like that was always my dad so my dad went to law school in India. He started it there. He didn't finish because they moved to the United States. But that was just something, they would always say like, oh, you're always asking why. You always want to know why about everything. And you're always like wanting to hear the other perspective. So it was kind of like, I think I remember back at like 9 or 10 years old where it was like, I was going to be a lawyer. And that was just kind of, I knew going into it, that's where I saw what I
Wow.
wanted to do. Yeah, I know.
Did you enjoy practicing law?
I did. I really, personally growing up in Chicago, my family was the only Indian family in an all Italian neighborhood.
Mm.
So I experienced a lot of harassment, discrimination because of where my parents are from, because of the color of my skin, and being the only Indian family. So I always knew I wanted to do some kind of social justice or trying to, make sure that people weren't being discriminated or harassed. I always knew I was gearing up to do that. And it worked out that when I went, after I graduated law school and I came to California, I took the bar exam out here and I just got into the employment law field. and slowly kind of figured out, wait, this is an area that I can really bring my passion and my experience together to kind of make a difference. And so that's why when I was litigating cases, I really focused in on harassment and discrimination cases, were the ones that really landed on my plate a lot. And it was wonderful to be able to help people, and because I went through that experience and I didn't want other people to have to go through the same kind of thing.
That's interesting. Awesome. So how long have you been working for yourself?
So I started my company in November of 2017.
Okay.
It was really like something, just a switch went off in my head, and I've been working up to it. So I've been doing training before that point, but working for other people, and it got to the point where I knew I wanted to use my voice and make a bigger impact. And so I don't know, the switch goes off. For me, it was like at age 43, right? Where I'm like, okay, it's now or never, do it, go for it. And so I went out on my own. And honestly, to be 100%, transparent, I never wanted to have my own business because my parents always had their own
Right.
business.
Yeah.
And so I was always like, I don't want to be my own, that's a lot of stress. You can't get away from it. And I just really was kind of repelled by having your own business. But I really just believed in the work that I was doing. I was getting really positive feedback from people, and they were like, you really need to focus on this. And so I went for it, and I'm still standing. COVID almost knocked me off, but here I am. I'm still standing. So I'm going to keep doing. Yeah.
So you switched and, as they say, pivoted, and now doing your trainings and courses online. Everything's online for you now.
I have pivoted just like everybody else. So I have converted a lot of my stuff. I'm doing more virtual trainings, not actually like live, like, you could buy it. Here's a Sejal training, but actual virtual trainings, because I think it's still important to have that engagement and
Right.
that interaction, especially with the topics that I'm working on, right? So I'm dealing with diversity and inclusion, sexual harassment. I'm dealing with civility in the workplace. You can't really, in my opinion, and okay, I'm biased on this, but I think you can't really teach that unless you have a conversation with people.
I agree with you. I agree with you. And besides, if you just put it out there and people have to take an exam or something at the end, you don't really know if they were just answering the questions the way they think they're supposed to be answered, or if rather than having a conversation and engaging them, where you can get a feel for whether or not they're really getting something, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And these are, look, I work in this field and I get asked questions that I'm like, whoa, these are challenging, emotional times. We've never gone through a pandemic like this. We're seeing this kind of civil rights movement in our lives. We're dealing with it head on in this way, this magnitude. Leaders and employees, everybody is sort of trying to figure it out and navigate this together, right? And so that requires some looking deep and challenging your own biases, that's another area that I'm really doing a lot of talking on, panels on, and speaking on, is unconscious bias, because we need to have these conversations. We can't deal with the issue of racism. We can't get past this point unless everybody gets on board and says, I need to do the work, right? I need to individually do the work so that I can bring my whole self to this collective movement that we need to do together.
Absolutely. I love the work that you're doing, and recognize that it's very much needed. And so appreciate that you've taken this on. Interested in knowing, since you started working at the age of 5, even though it was for your family, what are one of the biggest, or one of the top 2 big lessons that you've learned about working throughout your career, aside from civility?
Yeah, I have to, for me, then everything, obviously, I'll just start off by saying everything is based on my own journey, and everybody's journeys are different, right? But for me, one thing that I have really been very disciplined about is trusting myself, having self-trust for my own abilities. That is so huge, because I never really, I drew my boundaries as far as my education and my work early on, that this was going to be a huge part of my life. And so I drew these boundaries, and I enjoy life. I've done everything. I've done, it's not, I'm not saying I've been perfect by any means. I have not. But as far as where I wanted to make an impact in this world, and the kind of work I wanted to do, I drew those boundaries for myself. And I wasn't going to compromise those or stretch those for anybody else. And a lot of that was just kind of, I have to be my own judge. So when I look in the
Yeah.
mirror, did I show up every day? Did I bring my 100, whatever that 100% looks like in light of what I'm going through, right? And so that could be just showing myself that I am a reliable person to myself, that I can trust myself to
Mhm.
show up and do the work no matter what was going on in my life around me. And then holding myself accountable, right? So being honest with myself to like say, okay, you know what, you said you were going to do this and you didn't. And really having that conversation to say, this is not what I want. And I was very disciplined about that. Like I really tell people that I have just really truly been integrity the whole way through when it comes to my work, because I just can't say something to somebody else and say, you should be doing this if I'm not doing it. I just cannot, it
Right.
doesn't work, right? You got to practice what you preach and hold yourself.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
Absolutely. I love that. You are a leader, and you're right. You cannot ask other people or tell other
mm-mm,
people, train other people to do things, because otherwise they will see that you are not in your authentic self. And so it's
absolutely.
very important to walk the talk. And we were talking a little before we started, and you mentioned this earlier about your son. And I love that you have created work that prioritizes, right? That you're in touch with your boundaries, your values, your priorities, and then you've created the boundaries so that you can live the life that you want and bring work alongside of that. So um,
Absolutely.
that's one of the lessons and points that I think is really important. And the reason that I do this series is to help people
Mhm.
understand that that's possible, that you can live your life on your terms, your way, still work, earn a living, earn a good living, and make it all work for you, right? It doesn't have,
Absolutely.
which I think would then help with the civility part, right? If you are happy with the work that you're doing, you're happy in your life, there's no reason to show up to work and not be civil and not be respectful to other people.
That's it. That's it. And look, I think what we're talking about is so important, right? Because I mean, you got to compromise, right? If I want to make a lot of money and if I want to be, bringing in that then I have to sacrifice something in my life. That was just something that I was not going to sacrifice. Like when he was born and I decided to left, I was working as senior counsel at Gordon Reed's. That was my job that I
Oh,
was at.
wow.
And,
Yes.
and after that, I had my son and I had a decision to make. Am I going to go back to work and make that kind of money, or am I going to work? And I worked from home the whole time. I still had bills to pay, but I made that choice based on my values, right? And
Yes.
if you choose to work, that's your value, that's fine, but that's going to compromise something somewhere, and whatever that
Exactly.
looks like for you. But I'm not saying the way I did it was the right way for everybody, but for me, I lived within my means. I made sure that that was my priority because I did go back to work after he got to be about 3.5 years old. I was like, finally at that point, I'm like, okay, I could go back to work. And I went back to work full time at UCSF Medical Center. And I was there for 2.5 years. And you know what? Within those 2 years, he grew up so fast. I felt
Yeah.
like I missed out so much that I left it. And I go, nope, I cannot. I'm only having, for me, it was so important because I'm only having one child. I want to be present for that. And that's a priority for me. But I think whatever your priorities are and values, you just define those for yourself and then make
Absolutely.
sure they're ingrained within what you do. And I think another thing is too, we're human and we make mistakes, to forgive ourselves, to say, okay, yes, I wish I could have gotten these 100 things done on this day, but 9 of them didn't get done. And so they'll be there tomorrow, right? We
Exactly.
beat ourselves
Exactly.
up too much sometimes.
No, you're absolutely right. I think it starts there. You have to know what you want. You take into account your values and priorities. You put boundaries around those things that are really important to you, and then you can figure the rest of it out.
That's
And you're
right.
right. Cut yourself some slack. A little bit of grace goes a long way. absolutely no point in beating yourself up for things that don't get done. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. If you could impart a piece of advice to someone who's new to the field that you're in training and in helping people, whether it's in corporations or nonprofits or whatever, but they're taking on the role of a trainer, what is some advice that you would give them and new to that field?
Yeah, I mean, look, the way I did it was I really utilized LinkedIn as a professional network. I mean, when I worked, I think when I started my company, this was in November of 2017, I had 700 connections on there. I'm over 17,000 right now. So I have worked really hard building a network, but also making connections with people that want to be a part of my journey and that understand kind of where I'm going, and that I could bring my authentic self to LinkedIn. If you go look at my posts, that's who I am. And if it doesn't work for what you're looking for in a trainer, then I'm not the right person. That's okay. I'm not going to be the right person for everybody, and that's okay. But I also want people to know when they bring me in what I'm about, what I'm going to say, and why I want to come to your organization, if that aligns with your mission. So I think the first thing is to figure out what is it, what are your mission and goals and your objectives, and then go on LinkedIn, connect with people that are my strategy was to look at people that have been doing the kind of work that I want to do. They've been doing it for 20 years more than me, right? So these are people that I was like, they could maybe hopefully wants to be a mentor. Maybe they could just give me some guidance. Maybe they could be a sponsor. Maybe they can help me make some introductions. So I started doing that, and then I started building my connections, and then really just building connections with people and relationships, and not look. And the one thing I would say is, for anybody just starting out in this is, don't expect short-term rewards. Don't
Right.
get on a call with expectation you're going to sign a contract, and that's not how it works. And if you go into it with that kind of approach, you will not last, because this is not for the people with weak hearts, right? You don't have a steady paycheck, but you got to just trust. I always say this, like, I plant a few seeds every single day. I plant a few seeds, and when they sprout, they sprout. I'm going to keep watering them, and hopefully they'll, but it's just about connections. I truly believe in the value of making solid connections with good people that are aligned with your mission is really the critical component.
That's awesome. Well, Sejal, I am so pleased that you made time to come and chat with us and share your journey. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank
Um,
you.
that you are a recovering lawyer, so to speak, and moved on to other things. That touches me. I'm a recovering lawyer as well, and so the work that you're doing is so very needed, and I just really appreciate that you made the time. Just wondering if you have any final parting words that you'd like to share.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is, look, it's a very scary time for a lot of people right now. There's uncertainty, there's fear. And I would just say, you know what, get involved. Whatever your passion is, this is the time, embrace it. Find that joy in your life right now, when that's what's going to carry us through, and do what you can to support our current civil
Yeah.
movement, right? And be an ally, whatever that looks like. That, I just want to say, that doesn't mean you have to go out and protest on the picket line, but do something. This is the time we need everybody to jump on the Black Lives Matter and do what we can to build allyship. If you have the energy to educate people, if you don't, then take care of yourself. And the last thing I'll just say is, be mindful of what this is all bringing up for you. And if you're feeling frustrated and you're feeling like, I can't educate, I can't do it, then I would say, turn the computer off, put your phone away, go and take care of yourself. Just don't do anything that'll prevent us from moving forward. Like, there's a lot of people right now that are out there wanting to make this movement go and bring allyship. So if you can't help it, then just get out, just sit back, take care of yourself, get out of the way, let us do the work so we can keep this going in that positive direction.
Awesome.
That's it.
That's great advice. And I'm a big believer in self-care, turning off the
Yes.
computer, turning off the TV, so especially turning off the news. Um,
Oh my
all
gosh.
of those things have a place, but at the end of the day, you have to take care of you and your well-being,
Mhm.
because that's who you get to take with you to work, right? So
That's
if you
right.
don't take care of you in your life, it's kind of hard to bring a good, healthy you to your work. So again, Sejal, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so
And
much.
if anyone wanted to contact you, I will get your information. We'll put it in the comments so that they can reach
Okay.
out to you. And thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much.